It was a normal Sunday when I first discovered that my son Mark had blocked me. The shock hit me like a ton of bricks. He blocked me, my own son. I couldn't believe it. I immediately tried calling him, only to find that my calls wouldn't go through. He had blocked my number. The worst part, I had no idea why. It felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. For weeks I had been trying to reach him, hoping to visit my grandchildren, Emily and Sam. But no matter how hard I tried, I was met with silence. I'd left messages, sent cards, even reached out to family members, but no one had any answers. It was as if I had vanished from their lives. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. My name is Helen. I'm 68 years old, and up until recently, my life had been filled with the joy of spending time with my kids and grandchildren. I've always prided myself on being a loving mother, grandmother, and someone who would do anything for family. Mark, my oldest son, was always someone I felt particularly close to. We've had our fair share of disagreements over the years, but nothing serious enough to destroy the bond we shared. But that was before everything changed. When Mark blocked me, I was devastated. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I'd been there for him through everything: his college years, his marriage, the birth of his children. So why now? What had I done to deserve this? Was it something I said? Or had I overstepped some invisible line I didn't know existed? At first, I thought maybe it was just a misunderstanding. Maybe I had been too eager to see the kids. Perhaps I was too involved, but deep down, I knew that wasn't the real issue. There was something much bigger at play here, something deeper and far more painful. It wasn't just the blocking. It was the silence that followed. I started feeling like an outsider in my own family, and it hurt more than I ever could have imagined. I began questioning everything: my relationship with Mark, my place in their lives, even my ability as a mother and grandmother. But there was no way I was going to give up. I had raised my children with love, and I wasn't about to let one of them shut me out without a fight. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that this wasn't just about my own hurt feelings. This was about my grandchildren. I had missed so much of their lives in the past few months. Birthdays, school events, even just the small, everyday moments. But now, with the block in place, I couldn't reach out to them. Emily and Sam didn't even know what was happening. All I wanted was to be part of their lives. I was determined to fight for my family. But what could I do when my own son was the one keeping me away? I couldn't just sit back and let this happen. I had to act. But how? And so that was when I decided to do something I never thought I would have to. I was going to fight back. And I was going to do it in a way Mark would never expect. But little did I know, this would set off a chain of events that would change everything. It's funny how the mind can try to convince you that things will get better, even when deep down you know they won't. That's exactly what I thought the day I sat down to try calling Mark again. I had just received yet another voicemail saying he was too busy or that I should try again later. But this time, I was determined to get through. I can't give up, not like this. I dialed his number again, and once again, I was met with the cold silence of a blocked call. That's when it hit me. He wasn't just avoiding me, he was actively making sure I couldn't reach him. It wasn't just a mistake anymore, it was deliberate. Let me back up for a moment. Mark, my son, was always the pride of my life. Growing up, he was kind, responsible, and loved spending time with family. But as he got older, especially after his divorce, something started to change. I know divorce is hard, especially for someone as sensitive as Mark, but I never expected it to affect his relationship with me so drastically. I thought we had weathered it together. After all, I had been there when his world was falling apart. I helped him get back on his feet. Yet, things never quite returned to normal. His new wife, Sophia, was lovely at first, but even she seemed to pull Mark further away from the family. After their wedding, I started to feel like I was no longer part of their world. It was subtle at first, missed calls, empty promises of, "We'll catch up soon." But then it escalated. As I sat there staring at my phone, I couldn't help but feel like something was off. Mark's behaviour had been erratic for months. We hadn't had a real conversation in what felt like forever. And when we did talk, it was strained, like he was holding something back. It was almost as if he was afraid to let me in. The strange part was that this wasn't just about his relationship with me anymore. It was about Emily and Sam, my precious grandchildren. I hadn't seen them in over a month, and when I asked Mark if I could visit, he'd always have some excuse. Busy schedule, long day at work, or worse, silence. No, let's reschedule. No, I'll get back to you. Just nothing. I started to feel the weight of his avoidance. But what truly cut me to the bone was when he told me, in passing, that I was too overbearing when it came to the kids. Me? Overbearing? I had always been supportive, always wanting to help, to be involved. It felt like a slap in the face. And I couldn't shake the feeling that something was being kept from me. Looking back, there had been signs all along that I had ignored. I kept telling myself it was nothing. It was just the stress of his new marriage, or the pressures of raising two young children. But there were moments, small things, that didn't sit right. The awkwardness during family gatherings, the way Mark would sometimes change the subject when I asked about the kids. And now, with the block, it was as if the last thread of connection had been severed. What I didn't know at the time was that these signs weren't just random oddities, they were pieces of a much bigger puzzle. But I had no way of knowing that until someone from Mark's past came forward with a truth I was not ready to hear. It was only after weeks of unanswered calls and messages that I finally decided to get serious. I couldn't stand it any longer. There had to be a reason why Mark was doing this. I wasn't going to sit in the dark forever. So I made a decision. If I couldn't reach him directly, I would find someone who could. I contacted Olivia, Mark's ex-wife. I knew it was a long shot, but she was the only one who might understand what was going on. Mark and Olivia's divorce was messy, to say the least, but they had managed to keep things relatively civil for the kids' sake. I hadn't spoken to Olivia in a while, but I was desperate. I needed answers. To my surprise, Olivia agreed to meet me. We sat down at a small cafe and I poured out everything. Mark's strange behaviour, the blocking, the distance. She listened quietly, her face sombre. When I finished, she didn't say anything at first. It was as though she was choosing her words carefully, unsure if she should share what she knew. Finally, she sighed and leaned in closer. "Helen," she began, her voice low, "Mark's been struggling a lot, and I don't think you understand just how bad it's been." She explained how Mark had been having emotional issues since the divorce. The pain had never truly gone away, and he had started pushing everyone, including his own children, away. Olivia had seen it firsthand. She told me that Mark had confided in her recently about feeling like a failure as a father. It seemed like everything was falling apart for him, and instead of reaching out, he built walls. At some point, it seemed he started resenting the idea of being around family, our family. I had never realised how deep his struggles ran. It wasn't just about me, but about everything. Still, none of this explained why he would completely shut me out. But Olivia's revelations sparked something inside me. I realised that if Mark wasn't going to come to me, I needed to take matters into my own hands. It wasn't just about being blocked. It was about the children, my grandchildren. Emily and Sam needed to know that I wasn't just disappearing. I had to do something to break through. I contacted a family lawyer, Margaret, an old friend who had helped me with some legal issues years ago. Margaret was shocked by the situation, but also quick to offer advice. She explained that while family law matters could be tricky, I might be able to fight for visitation rights. I didn't know how serious things had to get, but I was willing to do whatever it took to get access to my grandchildren. I spent the next few days researching everything I could about family law. The idea of taking legal action felt like a last resort, but I knew it was the only way to break the deadlock. As I gathered my thoughts, I could feel the weight of the situation bearing down on me. This wasn't just about a phone call anymore. It was about my right to be a part of my grandchildren's lives. But that's when I began to feel the gravity of it all. Taking legal action meant I would be forced to confront Mark directly. This wasn't just some small family dispute. It could tear our family apart. And the last thing I wanted was to make things worse, especially for Emily and Sam. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that Mark had already made things worse by shutting me out completely. I wasn't going to sit back and let this happen without fighting for what was mine, the right to be a grandmother to those kids. The more I spoke with Margaret, the clearer it became that things weren't going to improve unless someone forced the issue. The thought of taking Mark to court wasn't a pleasant one, but I was starting to feel like I had no other choice. I knew that the decision I was about to make would shake things up, but what I didn't know was that it would lead to something completely unexpected, a confrontation that would change everything. Mark wasn't going to see it coming, and neither was I. The day I filed the papers for visitation rights, I felt a surge of fear and relief all at once. I had no idea how Mark would react. Would he be angry? Would he fight me? And what about Emily and Sam? I could already imagine the tension between us escalating into something neither of us would be able to undo. But there was no turning back now. I had made my decision, and I was committed. But as soon as I handed the papers to my lawyer, something completely unexpected happened. That night, Mark called. For the first time in weeks, I saw his name pop up on my phone. My heart skipped a beat. I didn't know what to expect. Was he angry? Was he going to yell at me? Or was he finally ready to talk things through? I hesitated for a moment before answering, unsure of what I was walking into. "Helen?" Mark's voice came through, sounding surprisingly calm. "We need to talk." I could tell something was different in his tone. He wasn't shouting, he wasn't defensive. Instead, there was something almost resigned. He continued, "I know what you've done. I know you filed for visitation rights." I braced myself. This was the moment I had been dreading. Was this going to be the end of our relationship, or was it a sign that he was finally ready to listen? Mark's voice wavered as he spoke. "I don't know if I can forgive you for this, Mum, but I need you to understand something. It wasn't just about you. It's never been just about you." The words hung heavy in the air. He went on to explain that his actions had been driven by something far more complicated than I had known. Over the past few years, he had felt like a failure, not only as a father, but also as a son. He had felt suffocated by the expectations that came with being part of our family. Mark admitted that when things got tough, he had pushed everyone away, including me, without realizing the damage it was causing. "I thought I was protecting myself. I didn't realize I was pushing you out of my life too." His words cut through me. There was regret in his voice. For the first time in a long while, I could hear the son I had raised, the son who had been so full of love and promise. As we talked, I began to realize just how much I had misunderstood. Yes, I had been hurt, and yes, I had every right to fight for my grandchildren. But what I hadn't realized was that I had also been fighting for my relationship with Mark. And that wasn't something that could be fixed overnight. "I'm not asking you to forget what I did," Mark said quietly, his voice cracking. "But I am asking you to understand why I did it. And I'm asking for a chance to make things right." I was about to respond when I heard a noise in the background. It was Emily. She called out to Mark, asking who he was talking to. And for the first time in weeks, I realized that I might not have been completely shut out of their lives after all. The conversation with Mark shifted everything. He wasn't just apologizing for the past. He was finally opening up about the pain he'd been carrying for so long. We spoke for hours that night, digging deep into everything that had gone wrong. I learned more in that single conversation than I had in years of trying to understand him. Mark wasn't just angry at me. He was angry at himself, struggling with feelings of inadequacy as a father and son. The walls he'd built around himself weren't just about protecting his family from me. They were a shield from his own emotions. In the weeks that followed, I could see Mark trying. He made an effort to reconnect with me, with Emily and Sam, and even with Olivia, who had been a constant support throughout. He wasn't perfect, but he was trying. Slowly, my visits with Emily and Sam resumed. It wasn't immediate or easy, but it was progress. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like things might actually heal. That first visit with my grandchildren after the legal proceedings was like a weight being lifted from my chest. Emily ran to me, throwing her arms around me in a tight hug. Sam was shy at first, but the joy in his eyes when I gave him his favourite toy was all I needed to know that our bond was intact. I had missed them more than words could say, and finally being with them again filled the empty space I had felt for months. It was like I could breathe again. Mark came along too, and the atmosphere was still a little awkward, but there was a tenderness to it. As we all sat down together for a meal, I realised that, despite everything that had happened, we were finding our way back to each other. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start, and that was enough. Things didn't return to how they once were overnight, though. Mark and I had a long road ahead of us. The tension between us remained for a while, and I knew there were still scars to heal. But something had changed between us. The truth had come out, and with it, a new kind of understanding. It wasn't just about fighting for my right to see my grandchildren anymore. It was about mending a fractured relationship with my son. The legal action had been necessary, but it was the emotional work we both had to do that truly mattered. Mark understood that I wasn't fighting against him. I was fighting for the family we once were, and the family I hoped we could be again. As I left that evening, walking to my car with a full heart, I realised that this had all been about more than just visitation rights. It had been about love, forgiveness, and the willingness to fight for the people who truly matter. For the first time in months, I felt hopeful. Mark and I still had a lot of work to do, but we were on the path to healing. And as I looked at my grandchildren, their faces glowing with joy, I knew that no matter what came next, I had done what I had to do to ensure they never felt the emptiness I had. I had fought for my family, and in the end, that's what truly mattered.